but then it would get to the point where he would say stuff like, you know, all right, 17,000 Japanese soldiers hit the beach. 10 went home. Let's go.
Yeah.
And guys would go, and they'd run out of the room and, or run onto the field. And I was always left with, I don't know what that means. What does that mean? And so I set out on this journey to understand what he was talking about. And what I figured out is no, keeping you guessing at what he was talking about was what he was talking about.
Right.
Hey, let's go.
What does lasting leadership look like? Because it doesn't seem like there's such a thing anymore. I mean, I feel like we can say, okay, Bill Gates is a leader and he's been around for a while. And we can say, but I don't know. Is it just money? What is he leading? We talk about Bill Belichick or we talk about whoever the president is. Those are all limited runs. They're all going to come to an end. Is there an ability? What does leadership look like?
That's a heck of a question. I'm going to tell I'll answer a little bit of it. Then sustain their leadership role in my eyes, and haven't broke my heart or then because that is such a it's such a fragile state. I think because I think a lot of lasting leadership has to do with who's following. And as the followers grow up and grow older and become more wise, the needs change in what their leadership looks like. So I think that's probably the easiest or the quickest answer that comes to my mind is that leadership is a constantly organic, evolving thing, and you're always looking to the people that you're leading and looking to their needs. It's a selfless thing, but there's all these built-in things that feed your ego as a leader too. You get joy out of that,
right.
And you have to be able to handle that part of it without it becoming the prime motivator. And
Right.
I think but I think honesty and truth is at the root of it all. I think that you can be flawed in your leadership if you're honest and truthful and people believe in you. And the transparent part of it is kind of a tricky thing, Tom. I think that to be a great leader, there's a certain amount of manipulation in it to get people to move in a direction that they don't really want to move in. And people say manipulation that's a negative connotation. It has a negative connotation, but I think that's what it is. You have to manipulate and massage a situation to get somebody to go do something that they wouldn't do on their own,
but is good for them.
That is good for
them. They
them.
don't even know it's good for them.
Right. And that's I think that's where it all starts, as far as I'm concerned.
I know that the big thing for me was, I've said it multiple times on here that I didn't have a huge, I was a heathen when I went to St. Paul. I like to laugh about that, and I got to learn religion from a, sort of a little bit more developed brain than a little second grader or whatever. And, so Jesus, I was a big fan, I'm a big fan of Jesus. I'm a big fan of what he was doing. I'm not a huge Old Testament guy. I didn't like that fear nonsense. And I love that servant leader thing. I know our buddy Rick O'Connor is always talking about servant leadership, # servant leadership. And I'll certainly put that in here on this video, but I always felt that way. I always, when I was coaching softball, I was the head coach. I would make my seniors do all the chores because they were old. They had been through the program. They had been shown that they could have responsibility. I didn't like that bullying. Hey, freshmen, pick up the buckets. Hey, freshmen, go rake the field. Hey, dude, how do they know what to do? They're going to do a shitty job. You're not doing it. Why? It's like your dad, the Beastie Boys, your pop caught you smoking and he said, no way. That hypocrite smokes 2 packs a day. So how are you going to say, don't smoke, kid? How are you going to do that? Go sweep out the dugout, kid. And I purposely flipped it on edge. And of course, I flipped far too many things on their head to be a successful head coach. But I was trying, and
is that a leadership by example thing, Tom?
I was really into that. Like serve others. Always because the big thing that we talk about in history, and I do see a lot of leaders, quote unquote leaders, but gee whiz, half of them are failures, right? Somebody has to lose the war. But I did always, I do. There's a theme that goes through a lot of what we're talking about. With when we're talking about power corrupts and power turns into tyranny. You mentioned that. That's what got me my ears up about the power and the egos and all that, stroking the egos. And I was always under the impression that we have to do everything we can to minimize our power and still be able to lead. Like to so we don't become tyrants. So we don't become that parent that says because I said so. I'm gonna say to my kid, do you want to take out the trash or do you want to do the dishes? I'm gonna do the other one. You get to pick. You want to do the dishes? I'll take out the trash. Let's go. Right now, let's go. Let's not wait around. Let's not play the video game. Let's go.
Right.
So that was kind of my thing because every time in history that I see a leader, the power corrupts them and they get drunk with power and they do really and they self-destruct and they rot from inside out. I have this
Right.
whole thing that I do with my class where I show them a board, a map, and I say, everywhere on this map had a king or a chief or something. And now there's only 5 places on this map that have that same monarchy or that absolute monarchy or whatever you want to call it. And the kids are going, really? And I go, England, that lady just kind of hangs out. She doesn't really do anything. You know what I mean? She has no power at all.
Right. Right.
So I feel like that's, whenever I see those coaches that they get the head coaching job and they're also the general manager and they're also this, I'm like, oh man, they're doomed. They're so doomed.
Well, again, I think there's so many facets to it. It's such a fascinating concept, the leadership thing, because being humble is a big part of it. Presenting humble and not being of the ego as much is very appealing to people until crisis hits.
Then you got
to, and then you need to look like that guy that's in charge, and you're not asking for somebody else to do it. And there's so many different levels of when leadership is humble and when leadership is manipulative and when leadership is demanding and then when leadership is absolute. I can't allow my soldiers to think that they don't know exactly what to do. There's it's life and death. So there's but I think the humanity of it all is what people, does he care about me? Right. Does he genuinely care about me? Even enough for me to be able to say he's got a job to do that's not all about me, but he does care about me. Right. And it was our thing that I've talked about before, where we were a yes sir, no sir program on the football field. Mm-hmm. Yes sir, I understand. I'm going to do my best. No sir, I don't understand. Can you please repeat yourself? Right. Explain it to me again. But when we got off the field, it was a conversation between men. Right. Where it wasn't about being in charge anymore. So I think listening is a huge part of good leadership. Mm-hmm. I can move you when I understand where you're coming from, where I can understand your concerns and your needs. I can move you in a direction that right. is going to get us to where we're going to be successful or move forward in any endeavor that we're doing. So
that was I think that was my big thing was, we can jaw jack around. I could be in the middle of the mud with you, but it's time to go, and you need to knock it off now. And this is what it's going to be. But I would tell them, okay, now serious time. Playtime's over. Now let's freaking go. Oh, okay, coach. And it took a whole year to get that, because they just thought I was more schizo than anything. And they're like, why is this guy telling us all this stuff? And oftentimes I would tell them my shortcomings. Just again, for me, transparency seemed to be the card that I could play. And I don't know if that's the right word, but I was like, yeah, I'm not really good at this. We're going to bring in a guy to be the pitching coach. I don't do that. That's not my thing, but I'm going to lead. I'm going to lead you. I'm going to get a guy. I'm going to get somebody to help you. I'm going to make sure your needs are met, because ultimately you guys got to do it for me in this case. With the family, I think that, I feel like, because of, the roller coaster life in California and the fast paced life in California, I feel like I felt like I leaned way too much on that dictator shit just to get through the next paycheck or whatever you want to call it. And I feel bad for my family because they didn't get enough of the love, enough of the rolling around and playing and wrestling it was all business all the time, you know, and I feel bad that they didn't get more. And I feel that, you know, people are, my boys and my wife are always constantly, you know, trying to sort out what they feel about all that. And unfortunately, there's room for doubt there. You know, unfortunately, I've left the room for doubt. What about this idea where less is more? Being more mysterious is a great way to lead. Being above, definitely being above everybody else. I wasn't that guy. I was in the muck. What what's the benefits of being outside of it? I feel like Belichick only talked to Tom Brady. You know, I don't think like anybody else was in his office. Like I think they were a different level. Is there
Yeah,
anything you can say about that, or?
yeah. Well, I think again, there's so many multifaceted levels to leadership that I think that there's certain amount of that, you know, I was fortunate as a player that I didn't social interaction was down 10 rungs down for me. That getting to what needed to be done was the most important thing. So I was distant from the people that I led, you know, and I think it helped me because there was some animosity toward me. There was some animosity to that 110% commitment to
Right,
this is what comes first.
right.
And so it helped me not have to deal with all the questions. You know, once you're that servant leader, you still have to decide how many questions you answer and how much time you spend explaining and talking through some of those things before you just go. And I hate, I don't use it and I hate it, but it's a prime example of because I said so.
Right.
You know, at some point it's because I said so that you need to be able to separate. And again, if you build that trust, then you know, and again, a lot of great leaders are distant from their players and their the people
Hmm.
that are following them, and they have a bigger than life kind of a look. You know, the bigger the corporation is, you know, the
Yeah.
farther away that leader is, and
Right.
you only get to see him on, you know, on once a
Once a
month
year.
Wednesdays, and he comes down and gives a speech, and everybody goes, "Oh my God, that's why we're badass, and that's why he's in charge." And then he goes back off. So if he was to call and say, I need Johnny, I need you to freaking come up and do something for me.
Who's
You'd
this?
be running. Well, no, you'd be running up the stairs,
Oh yeah,
going, you
yeah.
know, jumping in the elevator, going, yeah, woohoo! And you don't know that guy. You
Right.
know, he could be a real freaking asshole,
Right.
but he's separate enough to where there's not a lot of light shining on him to everybody, and I think that serves itself well too. You know, there's certain things you can't talk about everything all the time. You
Right.
can't talk about the people I'm leading. I can't talk about their feelings all the time.
Hmm.
You know, they have to know I care. They have to know I'm listening. But we can't spend an inordinate amount of time talking about you because there's 100 other guys that need that same love that
Hmm.
I got to get to. You know, so it's incremental.
I had the same experience as a leader. I was lucky enough to have a girlfriend that I was really close to that I could be removed from the day to day drama of my friends and the girlfriends chasing him down the hallways and the drama and the soap opera life of my high school life was not soap opera. You know, I didn't have that. I could dip my toe in, you know, and I didn't have to. And I led by example for the most part. And I was furious a lot of times when, you know, people weren't following me. I didn't have the well rounded skill to drag people up with me. I didn't learn the whisper in the ear thing. You know, come on, man, I got you. You know, I just said, just be like me if you could, or be like Vic Omedo, or be like Rick Cepeda, or be like Mike Yukon. Just fucking what difference does it make? Just go for it. And the year before it was Matt Willig, and you know, freaking these dudes is like it's easy. To me, it was easy. So that I had the same experience. I know there was some animosity. I knew I was standoffish, you know, and again, even in my family, there's this standoffishness, like, oh, you're over here, I'm over here, a little bit too much for, unfortunately, and I've created that. I think it's a moat, right? I created that moat around the castle a little bit, you
Sure.
know, so I can do what I'm doing. But there's a great scene. I said it before. I'm going through West Wing, just watching one episode after the other, one a night. It's pretty cool that way, actually. And there's a
The
great
best
scene
the best
where,
written the best written show
yeah,
ever.
right. I mean,
I love
you
that.
just
That's
need a dose of it every 5 years, you know,
yep.
every 4 years, duh.
Sure.
There's a great scene, and you'll know this scene, Chuck. The president's priest, his childhood priest, shows up. KARL Malden. I don't know if you guys know who that is. He shows up to the Oval Office, and he has a philosophical slash whatever. He has a question for his priest. He has to ask the priest a question. But the priest, like everyone else, is sort of blown away by being in the Oval Office. He's freaking out a little bit, you know. And he says, "What do I call you? Do I call you Jed, like I did when you were a kid, or do I call you president?" And and Jed Bartlett said, "In this room, you call me president." And I thought, "Oh, fuck, that was very cool." You want to walk out there on the grass, or you want to, if I'm in your church, you call me son, or you call me Jed, or you call me whatever you want to call me. But and he explained it. He goes, "I'm not trying to be a," he didn't say dick, but I'm not trying to be a dick, but I have to be the office when I'm here, because I have to make decisions as the office, not as a man or not as a person. And I was just like, wow, talk about leadership. That
Yeah.
was, you're telling this dude, that would be like me calling you son, you're my coach, it's
Right.
like, dang,
Right.
it's so weird.
Yeah,
I was
I
like,
think that scene had to do with them killing the guy on the airplane that
yeah, they
they
shot the
killed.
dude up.
Yeah, and and he was having a lot of
Yeah,
Catholic guilt
sure.
over killing that guy, and it just goes to show you. I think there's, like I said, it's such an evolving, moving target leadership is, and if you're
Mhm.
not paying close attention all the time, and I think that's why a lot of people fail, and they rise and they fall because they just don't keep their eye on the people
Right.
they're leading. It becomes about them, and their ego grows, and their ability to feel that power grows, and you lose sight of that. I think it's a little easier as a coach because I mean, again, don't get me wrong, 80% of the coaches are like that.
Yeah.
There's some sort of, and maybe it's 70 and whatever, but there's a lot of coaches who get into coaching who love that power,
Yeah.
and I had some coaches that were very, very power hungry that I didn't think were very good coaches,
Mhm.
but they treated people badly
Right.
to try to make themselves feel important, and the end all answer to things, and it only made us doubt them, and so to not allow that to happen. And again, the guys that I have learned from, I didn't know a lot about my father in his leadership roles, but I
Right.
did then eventually meet and work with a lot of cops, a good handful of cops that had worked for him and or worked in the department long enough that they knew of him. And he was, like they say about coaches, a player's coach.
Right.
He was there for his men. And if people can say that to you, then chances are they're going to follow you when it comes time to do the run through the wall or break through the door or go play the number one team in the nation. And
Yeah.
you're going to go without the fear because your leadership has given you the confidence to go, we're going to do the right thing. We know what to do. We're going
Right.
to follow because that's our job, and we feel good about that. And I think so that it always is a question on, I can yell at Johnny and he will bust his ass.
Mhm.
I can yell at Mikey, and Mikey will fold up like a freaking piece of tinfoil.
Right.
So if you don't recognize that, then you got half the guys that are going to run through the wall, and you got half the guys that are going to fold up like a piece of tinfoil, and that doesn't work.
Right.
So you got to be able to relate to those guys.
Mhm.
The other thing, I'll turn it over to you with this thought.
Sure.
I think that the cause is a big deal.
Mm.
What am I leading you for? you know
Right.
am I trying to lead you into battle on the football field, or am I trying to lead you
Are
as
you
a
a cult
president of a
leader?
nation, or am I trying to lead you to make good decisions in school? I mean, again, it all has to do with the motivation. What are we trying to accomplish? There's a certain amount of veracity that needs to come at people when you're trying to break down a door and run into something the unknown.
Right.
There's a lot of humble concern when you're trying to get them to show that humble care of somebody else. And I think those are again, they're all moving targets, and you need to pay attention to them all to be sustained leadership over a long period of time.
I love the I love the I love the choice that they made in West Wing where Sam Bartlett or Sam Seaborn is the guy that he's so chill and relaxed and semi wimpy, physically. But whenever the opposition will say something like, "Well, Bartlett doesn't know what he's doing," he'll say, "President Bartlett." Like I just fucking love why he's the guy. There's a
Yeah,
bunch of tough dude, fucking the other guy that the ball headed guy, he's a tough son bitch, like he'll tell you straight up. I just love the fact that the president was able to get his sergeants or his captains to sort of respect the job like that. And when he says it's time to go, it's time to go. And then
that's a
nobody
great.
screws around more than Jed Bartlett. Jed Bartlett is the biggest clown. A lot of with all his little facts and his trivia, and wants to play the chess and all, whatever. And then but there's a time has flipped the switch. It was pretty cool, man.
Well, and you've made a great point. One of the other things that I guess that we haven't really spent any time on yet is surrounding yourself with quality people.
Yeah.
You know, I used to say it to my staffs, and I don't know how much I really meant it at times. Like I'd say, I don't need to be the smartest one in the room.
Right.
The ideas are going to come from
My
everybody,
grandfather's deal. Yeah.
and we are going to be. But I will make the decision in the end. But if you don't contribute, then our
Don't
cause
complain.
is lopsided. I don't have the perspective that you have or you have. And if you surround yourself with people who you appreciate their intellects and their ability to motivate and lead, then you can really draw from a lot of different perspectives.
Dude,
And I think,
you're 10% weaker if that guy doesn't speak up. He
right.
has to realize that if he doesn't say that, we're only burning 90% right now at best. And if somebody has a jackass thing to say, now we're down to 80%. And now, before you know it, it's a 50-50 call. I was already there.
Right.
I
Yeah.
already had that amount of, that, and I think if we're going to talk about leadership, two things. Number one, nobody's ever going to remember what you say. They're going to remember how you make them feel. And maybe that's going to be our first thing in season 2 that you're going to write in the comments. I cannot remember for the life of me who said that. So put that in the comments down there. I know it's either Lincoln or Washington or Gandhi or one of those people because it's in my world. I don't, no one will ever remember what you say. They remember how you made them feel. And I think that's a huge deal because I talk to some leaders these days and I give very deliberate, straightforward questions with almost yes or no answers, and they give me vague answers. And I
Right.
get frustrated, but they always remember to make me feel good. Hey, Tom, you're doing real good. You're such an important part of the program here. And I walk away and I like getting stroked a little bit, but I walk away saying, I really didn't get an answer, did I? Yeah. I really
Yeah.
don't know that guy. I would want to just go have a beer with the guy, but I don't know if I do want to go have a beer with the guy. Maybe I don't want to know. I don't want to
It,
see
it,
my principal on Facebook. I don't really don't want to know.
right.
I don't
Yeah.
want to know what he does, what he dresses up for at Halloween and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
You don't want to meet your heroes. There's no doubt.
You don't want to
You
meet your heroes.
no. Somebody said that too.
Yeah, I think that any just to piggyback to what you're saying, we can't talk about this without talking about a team of rivals, and we can't talk about this without talking about Lincoln and the way he hired all his enemies, and that idea that he was so strong as a leader, he was going to surround himself with dissenters and he was going to either win them over or they were going to win him over. And 10 to 1, the cabinet, whatever, how many people in the cabinet at that time, I believe it was 10. He'd got his 10 enemies. And at that time, Chuck, whoever took second was the vice president. So even his vice president was his freaking enemy, and
Right.
I really love that because
Yeah.
I often see it's almost cartoonish, the yes man concept. That we have evolved into this society where we like people around us telling us yes, yes, yes. That is different than having a same goal and a same vision. Like there's a lot of ways to get into the end zone. Hey, I think special teams is the way to get in the end zone. Coach, you're like, hey man, I think pick six is the way to go. Now I think running the sweep, this offense, that offense. We get all caught up, but as long as we have the same goal, we can respect each other, and I feel, without getting too political, I feel like, that's something that someone hopefully can stand up and lead our country back to this together. What can we do and what
Right.
who we are. How is
Well,
obstructing making us better? Like on either side. I don't
yeah.
know how those folks survived without a paycheck. I don't understand that. I could never walk in their shoes. I don't know what that is. I was fortunate enough to get a paycheck. I still had a job. So where's the leadership in that? I know that my leaders were propping me up, and I know they didn't have the same um, they don't have the same politics as me, Chuck. And they were propping me up, keeping me floating because they knew I was boots on the ground. They knew I was the closest thing to the kids,
Right.
And I'm a little bit of a I'm a little bit of an all-star with the kids. They know that I can reach a significant portion of them, if I put my mind to it. But if my mind is fucked up, you know, I will tell you, I didn't mind being a captain, Chuck, but I hated being the head coach. I mean, I didn't hate it. I just didn't like talking to the parents and all their stuff. And I just
Right.
want to coach softball. I just want to coach football. So it's better for me to be a coordinator. It's better for me to be the third base coach. It's better for me to, get my socks dirty than it is to, you know, go to the booster club meeting, man.
Yeah,
That's
but
not my
you
bag.
never you never take away though that the example of how you treat people and those kind of things were
Oh,
important. We
right.
we I have a really unique experience with Marion Ansich,
Yeah.
who's winning us California high school coach at that
Right.
time and all that kind of good stuff. And from my freshman year and sophomore year, I worked in the office, so I got to see him even at a young age and how he acted. And he was a very mysterious, very removed kind of guy.
Right.
And all that time when I first stepped on the football field at my sophomore year, and we started practicing with the varsity and started seeing him and listening to him after practice every day, and watch him come into a meeting, and how everything got quiet
Mhm.
and everybody was ready at attention when he walked in the room.
Right.
It was this amazing thing. So obviously I was all ears and eyes and
Yeah.
ears going, what is that? But but then it would get to the point where he would say stuff like, all right, 17,000 Japanese soldiers hit the beach, 10 went home, let's go.
Yeah.
And guys would go, and they'd run out of the room, and or run onto the field, and I was always left with, I don't know what that means. What does that mean? And so I set out on this journey to understand what he was talking about. And what I figured out is no, keeping you guessing at what he was talking about was what he was talking about.
Right. Right.
And his management style was, and it's really interesting because he kept everybody fighting with each other.
Mm.
He kept there's these
Tension.
little animosity going between the coaching staff, so they would be picking at each other and fighting with each other, and therefore be more motivated to do a better job. And so there was this competition going on all the time, and it always seemed like it was kind of like, what in the world would you want your guys fighting for? But obviously the proof was in the pudding.
Yeah,
They
it
had
worked.
unbelievable stats, and each of us had a position coach who was up on a pedestal just below Marion. So
Hmm.
they were these great leaders in a number of themselves, who most of the guys that I was fortunate to play for in my career went on to be head coaches at
Right.
other schools, and they were
Right.
very successful.
Yes.
And but that concept of having this turmoil and this animosity going to drive people to be better was just a real eye opener for me.
Right.
And it really turned me off. And I learned, I was railing against that kind of leadership through the last couple of years of my high school career.
Hmm.
And it was, it was it was my leadership of the players, because there was no doubt that I was the leader
Hmm.
amongst three or four other guys who,
Yeah.
but I didn't have a big cast of characters.
Yeah.
There was a goal here, and that Marion's goal was the same as my goal, and then we got to it totally different ways.
Right.
But the demanding of the ability to follow along was absolute.
Right.
Marion did not allow people, for the most part, except for my white shoes,
Right.
um, you know, step out of line. If you were a detriment to the team, then you were eliminated. For me, if you were a detriment to whatever the defense or whatever I was railing on at the time,
Mm.
then we had a problem and we would go at it. But as I grew into a coach myself, I went, I'll never be like that. I'll never do. That won't be my style of leadership. But every year, every 5 years that I grew up and matured, I understood him a little bit better.
Right.
And it made me mad because I was so adamant about fighting against that I started to go, wow, is my whole picture a lie? And I
Yeah.
had to really sort those things out. And it
Yeah.
it made me feel real good about ultimately who I've become as
It's
a leader.
different color glasses for sure,
But it surely was an interesting thing to be exposed to,
I
and
li- I've been so lucky to be. I think I was lucky. I don't think I was unlucky. I was so lucky to be this this Generation Xer kid where, you know, totally understood completely the paramilitary aspect that he set up, for instance, or any head coach would set up. You'd have the
right,
head coach as the general, you'd have the major, the coordinators, you'd have the position coaches, you'd have the, managers, lower level coaches, and the team captains, the starters, all the way down. That I totally understood that. It was every John Wayne fucking movie, you know, um, Saving Private Ryan, the chain of command, things go up, they don't go down. I love that, and but at the same time, I got coached by a guy like Coach Clarkson, Steve Clarkson, who, let's fucking ball. Let's fucking let it all hang out. We were, I got coached by you, who, for whatever, however you fit into a paramilitary organization, gee whiz, your dad was a sergeant, for crying out loud. You stepped out. You pushed the envelope with the white shoes and this and that, and then. But it's funny that you say that because, frankly, I remember very, very vividly when Jimmy Johnson hit the scene and he talked about the way I treat Emmett Smith is going to be different than the way I treat the fourth string guy. And that was like some kind of revolutionary deal. Like, oh my God. And then he goes out and wins 3 Super Bowls, and you're like, oh, okay, that's the way we're doing. That's what we're doing now, and we're gonna all
right.
be loosey goosey, and who cares anymore? And St. Paul hung on to it, but to hear you speak without a word being said, because of your skill, because of your leadership ability, because of your performance, first and foremost, he was able to just turn his eye to those white shoes. And I don't know if every time you ran up to him to get a message or say what the play is going to be, he looked down at your shoes, motherfucker. I don't know if that happened. I don't know if he was oblivious to it. I don't know if he didn't think it mattered, because the other part, I'm sorry to Bogart all the time here, but
No,
the
it's
other
good.
part of the magical, when my grandfather talks about the magic of the military, and I think there's going to be a lot of people get upset with this, but I want you to look deep. My grandfather was definitely a deep guy. Was that little thread of fucking bandit, that little thread of pirate, that little thread of who the fuck is going to go across the country anyways in a covered wagon? You got to be a badass. And there's those people, those soldiers were allowed to be badasses within the rules. As
Right,
long as you fucking salute and say sergeant at the end, you can say whatever you want. Fuck you, sergeant.
right,
Oh, really? Okay, fuck you. Let's go. Okay, but you're not going to get court-martialed. I got to pick up the freaking gun. I got to run at the machine gun nest. That's not in the manual, but I'm going to fucking do it. And we call those guys Congressional Medal of Honor. We call those guys
right.
Purple Heart. And
Hmm.
my grandfather would always say that. He goes, it wasn't really that difficult to beat the Germans because they were subservient to their leadership on our topic. If we would shoot the leader, if the captain got one between the eyes, those guys would put up their hands and we're good. And again, shoot, we before you know it, we would have a private first class leading the charge if everybody else went down, and we were good with
Right.
that. We'd
Yeah.
rather not lose.
Yeah.
So I just love the mysteriousness of Marion, where he was uber paramilitary, he was super structured and super dictatorial when it needed to be, and then sometimes he let it
Yeah.
cruise. I mean, I can only imagine what he said to Andy Stankiewicz. How the fuck are you going to play baseball and run track and do all these other things? What did he say to Alex Espinoza? Can he wear a towel? You can wear a towel. Alex can wear a towel. He's the only guy I've ever seen wear a towel. You know what I mean? Like, huh? I remember all those stories by the time I got to
Sure.
St. Paul.
Yeah.
But I just feel blessed that I got to go through it all, because I feel like my coaching career would have ended a long time ago if I was strictly in the paramilitary.
Right.
And meeting the Jimmy Johnsons and the Marion Antiches and the Steve Clarksons and the Chuck Willigs and those cats, you know, able and really gave me another generation's worth of people that at least it was a tool. I could say, well,
Yeah.
I'm going to go to this, I'm going to go to that. You know who the kids are. You know who the
Right.
kids are that you can put your foot up their ass, and you know the kids you got to put your arm around, and I don't know.
Yeah.
I
No,
think
those are all. It's exactly how it is. And I think what to sum up that what you've been talking about is that great leaders are great readers, and they read and they pay attention and they listen to other people and they watch what other people are doing. They're not so full of their own ego that, again, that's what's sustainable, I think. I mean, the leaders that are great leaders and rise and then crash and burn real hard, I think they lose perspective on what I can learn from other people. And I think
right,
that that's a great leadership skill that sustains you, is to be able to adjust and change and listen and know your audience and know the people, so that you're not always the same,
right,
because that's, again, you can be successful for a little while, but unless you're willing to adapt,
right,
then you're going to be in a world of hurt when your audience changes, when
right.
your team structure changes. And that's why, yeah, Marion was a guy who wanted that controversy amongst his staff, and they wanted
Yeah,
him going at it. Well, he wanted the same thing with us.
we were fighting on the field as players. It's so
Yeah.
weird.
I mean, there was fighting going on all the time. Like I
Yeah,
told you before, Mike Gallego, one of the greatest athletes to come out of St.
ever,
Paul,
ever.
major, won two World Series or three
Yeah,
World Series or whatever, and now is the bench coach with the LA Angels, and had a great career, one of the best. And we fought every single day.
every day.
Unfortunately, those wide receivers had to get down to a 3-point stance back when I still played. That's a no-win situation with a
It's a
guy
no
standing
win.
over top of you. Fucking
Mm-hmm.
nobody's calling holding penalties in high school in
Mm-hmm.
practice. And so
Yeah,
but I mean, there was that competition going on all the time. The other
right,
thing is, if you do it right, there's competition going on amongst everybody all the time.
right,
And you're not afraid to pull somebody and put somebody else in, to say everybody is fighting for a job all the time. There's that constant competition going on. But it's a great question, Tommy, and I think we can explore this more as we get down the road. And
I know we're up against 45 minutes. So I think we should cut it. But I will say this: it was so nice to find St. Paul. For me to whatever convoluted thing happened for me to get there, because I was actually found a place where I could fight. Like where it was okay to care that much about something. And I'm not saying everybody did. And there was a lot of sissy fucking parochial school kids that did fucking 8 years on parochial school that I had the fucking advantage over, but I didn't care. I just thought that it was a good fit because I wouldn't get in trouble. I wouldn't get I used to get, so much trouble. I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to get in trouble. But I feel this way. I feel this way. And I want and I believe people will fucking feel that way too, and we can win.
Coach Roddy Hyatt used to say all the time, you gotta let your ponies run.
There you go. All right, let's
and
stop there. That's
all
awesome.
right.